Hello chess fans, this is Rick from Chess to Impress with a video on Magnus Carlsen losing against his future second. What is this story about? Well, I found the game in this book, Grandmaster versus Amateur. It's a book I used as a giveaway for a competition I'm running on Chess to Impress. It's sponsored by the Mind Game Shop, a website with lots of mind game products. The link is in the description box. Please have a look and click on the Mind Game Shop website to see what they have on offer. You can still, by the way, take part in week 2 of the competition. It's on video number 227 and the results will be published on Saturday the 21st of October. But back to this story. Magnus Carlsen losing against his future second. The game that I found in the book was analyzed by that future second, who is Peter Heine Nielsen, the Danish Grandmaster. It was played in 2005 in the German Bundesliga, in the German League. It was played on the 12th of March. Peter Heine Nielsen was white, Magnus Carlsen was black. Of course, Magnus Carlsen was not yet the world champion at that time. He was only 14 years old, but he was already very, very strong. He was already a grandmaster. The comments I give when showing you this game are coming from Peter Heine Nielsen, who analyzed the game for the book I just showed you. He starts by saying, "I played a 14-year-old Norwegian kid who was making his debut on board 1 in the German Bundesliga. By the time of this game, Magnus had a rating of 2581, although he hit a few slight roadblocks in 2005, and it was not until 2006 that he broke the 2600 barrier. Despite his phenomenal abilities, he was still a young kid who had a number of holes in his game. I knew Magnus quite well and had done a few training sessions with him. My impression from that time of an enormously talented kid who isn't especially hardworking or well prepared in the opening still stands." So the game was played in 2005 and the book was written in 2011. Let's have a look. Peter Heine Nielsen plays knight f3. Carlsen answered with knight f6, c4, g6 and g3. Bishop g7, bishop g2, both players castled, and Carlsen played d5. Nielsen took, Carlsen took back, knight c3, knight c6 and d4. And Nielsen writes, "Through a different move order we have now a normal Grunfeld Indian position," which was an opening that Carlsen really played a lot in those days, so Nielsen had prepared for it. Knight went back to b6 and e3. Nielsen says, "Transposing to the main line which I had prepared," and d5 was another move that he had considered in his preparation. Rook e8 and now d5, which was the critical move at the time the game was played, 2005. And later, as Nielsen writes, rook e1 became more popular in this variation. But d5 was played. Carlsen answered knight a5, knight d4, bishop d7, e4, white is building a very strong center, c6, attacking that center, rook e1, Carlsen took, e takes, rook c8 and bishop f4. Here Nielsen writes that Magnus sank into thought after this move, and spurred on by the optimism of youth, he was only 14 years old, he tried to refute white's setup outright, at least to make sure white did not get a opening advantage. He played knight b to c4, which was a big surprise to Nielsen. He says that h6 is a normal move and he was prepared for that. Or another move he had expected was the other knight to c4, and then he gave this variation. You can kick that knight with b3, it goes back to d6, queen d2, and then knight a8 to activate the black queen to either a5 or b6. This is what Nielsen had prepared for. But Carlsen played knight b to c4, the other knight. And after b3, knight b2, into white's camp. And Nielsen calls it a highly imaginative move, which made me wonder if the boy sitting opposite me was not only ignorant, but also a genius. The latter proved to be an entirely appropriate description, as it turned out, in the years to come. Knight b2, what is that? Well, for starters, it's attacking the queen. The queen has to play queen d2, attacking the knight. And then it looks like that knight is stranded, and it is. But here comes Carlsen's idea. Knight a to c4, sacrificing a piece for only a pawn. Nielsen took, knight takes, attacking the queen again, and queen d3. And now that knight jumps back to b2. And Nielsen writes, now the point of black's play becomes clear. He intends to continue harassing my queen, who will have to keep d4 and c3 protected, and so it looks like the game will end in a draw through move repetition. Yes, the queen has to keep an eye on d4 and c3 because the knight is attacked by the bishop and that knight is attacked by the rook. So if white does not want to lose the piece that he just won, he has to keep defending those squares with his queen. So he played queen e3 after a long think, and he says, after a long think I found a flaw in his idea, forcing the weakening f5. He's going to force that move before rejoining the waltz with his jumping knight. Let's see what happens. So Carlsen played knight c4 as planned to look for a perpetual or for a move repetition. And now the queen went to e4. And f5 is the only move to keep the idea going. Of course, black is a piece down, so he really depends on this maneuver of keep attacking the queen. So f5, queen back to d3, and there we go dancing again. Knight b2, queen d2, knight c4, and now queen to d1. That was Nielsen's idea. Knight b2, black doesn't really have an option. And here comes the idea. Queen b3. Nielsen writes, this was the idea. Having forced a weakening of the a2 g8 diagonal, the queen leaves the d4 knight to its fate in order to take up a menacing post opposite the enemy king. Quite instructive. So this was the weakening move of the a2 to g8 diagonal. And that's where the queen has got to now. So Nielsen is giving the piece back. This piece is now undefended, but he's getting play against black's weakened king. Quite amazing. Carlsen has to take the piece back. He's now a pawn up. Nielsen says that here he should have played bishop c7, attacking the queen. Queen has no square, so you have to take that piece. Rook takes, and then d6 check. There's a discover the check to the king, and you're attacking the rook at the same time. So rook c4 is the variation that Nielsen gives, and then bishop d5 check, forking king and rook, king g7, bishop takes, knight takes, queen takes, and then Nielsen gives e5 to protect the bishop and rook ad1. And he says white has an advantage. His plan is to return the exchange on d4 at some point. So this all started after bishop takes d4 and then bishop c7. But that's not what Nielsen played. He said he should have played it, but he played d6 check straight away. If you play king g7, that loses to queen takes b2, bishop takes c3, and then the very strong bishop e5 check, winning that piece on c3. It would have been the same if you had taken back with the rook on c3. So after d6 check, Carlsen did not play king g7, he played e6, knight e5, and you cannot take that knight. If you take it, there is queen takes d5 check, bishop e6, queen takes d4, White is totally winning here. The engine is already on +6. Black's king is unsafe. White has 2 strong bishops. Very strong pawn on d6. This is not playable for black. So after knight d5, Carlsen did not take that knight. He played bishop a4. And Nielsen writes, a sign of what a great defender Magnus Carlsen has become. This move forces me into a concrete tactical fight, whereas less energetic alternatives would have enabled me to strengthen my attack at will. So a great move from Carlsen, a fighting move. Nielsen took that pawn on b7, which is unprotected, and knight d3, looking with 2 pieces at the f2 square. Nielsen played knight e7 check as an in-between move, king h8, and this is what he calls a decisive mistake. Both players missed that rook takes e7 holds a draw. I won't give you all the variations. There are many variations that Nielsen gives, but this is apparently which holds a draw for black. Carlsen played king h8 and Nielsen played bishop e3, shielding the f2 square and challenging black's control over the a1 h8 diagonal. Rook c4 from Carlsen. Nielsen says going down quickly, but black did not have a defense. Because Nielsen here found the only winning move, queen a6, and that decides the game. Carlsen took the rook on e1. If he had played knight b2, protecting the rook, that also loses quickly because of queen takes c4, queen sacrifice, knight takes c4, bishop takes d4 check. The king on h8 is in big trouble. e5 only move, but then rook takes e5, and white is threatening to play that rook away with checkmate. So that doesn't work. After queen a6, as said, Carlsen took on e1. Nielsen took the rook on c4, and now Carlsen decides to take the other rook. Bishop takes a1. Nielsen writes he's attempting a final roll of the dice, and there's a nice saying in chess, a dying man can eat everything. So Carlsen decides to eat that rook on a1. There was still a trick, because queen d4 check looks a very fancy checkmate for the gallery play, but it doesn't work because, well, it does work if you take the queen, because then bishop takes d4 check, e5 only move, and bishop takes e5 is a very nice checkmate with bishop and knight. But back to the variation, queen d4 check, double question mark. e5 here spoils the fun, and we have an even position. Nielsen did not fall for this. After bishop takes a1, he did not play queen d4, but he played bishop d4 check, and that's a forced mate. Carlsen played e5, and now the only winning move, but Nielsen found it, queen c4 to e6. Here Carlsen resigned. There's no good defense against queen f6 mate. And if you play rook f8 to defend the f6 square, then you also get mated. Queen takes e5 is then the move, rook f6 the only move, and queen takes f6 is checkmate. Very nice game from Peter Heine Nielsen, who's not only Carlsen's second, but here you can see that he can play a little bit himself as well, beating Magnus Carlsen on the 12th of March 2005 in the German league. I really like this game, with Carlsen's piece sacrifice for a perpetual attack on the queen, and then Nielsen refuting that with this queen d1, queen b3 maneuver, after first making sure Carlsen had to weaken his king's position with f5. Very nice game, very instructive. Difficult game, not easy at all, but it shows the strength of not only the top grandmasters, but also the helpers of the top grandmasters. Peter Heine Nielsen, great game. Hope you liked the video, hope you will play in the competition, video number 227, and hope you will click on the link of the sponsor, the Mind Game Shop. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up, please subscribe to the Chess to Impress channel, please leave a comment, and it would be great if you liked the video that you would share it on social media. You also may want to check out my Chess to Progress channel, the link is in the description box. This is Rick from Chess to Impress. Thank you for watching.